was the strongest demon king that ever existed, yet I was killed and mocked by the heroes, something that should never have happened, all because I followed the damn demon code. If I had been given a second chance, everything would have been different. Wait, I did get a second chance. Now I will use everything I have to toy with, humiliate and kill those heroes. But first, I will build an empire with the best servants. I will kidnap the greatest mage, the finest smith, the most skilled spy, and even the #1 butler. My tower will be impenetrable, and every nation will tremble in fear. Just wait, heroes. Blood spilled from his mouth as Burj Dayas laughed bitterly, spitting it onto the dirt beneath him. People always denied reality when it became too absurd to accept. He had done the same. He had refused to acknowledge the truth even as it stood right in front of his eyes. His black flames, the source of his pride, hadn't even scratched the heroes. Not a single scale of theirs had burned. What he couldn't understand, no matter how hard he tried, was why the hero's blade had pierced straight through his scales and buried itself into his heart. It made no sense. He had been superior to everyone. He had entered the Demon King Academy at the very top of his class and graduated as its valedictorian. The standard of the Demon King was a foundational doctrine established by the first Demon Emperor, the very one who built the demon realm itself. Burj had studied that theory deeper than anyone else. He followed it religiously. According to the standard, a demon king was supposed to build a tower and kidnap princesses, nurturing the heroes who would come to rescue them. Rage and sorrow were the ultimate feast. Killing heroes too early was considered a waste. The standard taught demon kings to fatten their prey first, to let despair and fury ferment before devouring it all at once. Only then would the meal be truly delicious. Burj followed those teachings more faithfully than anyone. World domination had been nothing more than a matter of time. He absorbed the rage and sorrow of countless beings, heroes included, and became stronger than any demon king before him. And yet there he was, lying face first in the dirt. Why him? He asked the hero how this could have happened. The hero answered in a condescending tone, saying demons were all the same. They always set everything up themselves, then acted shocked when things blew up in their faces. Burj genuinely couldn't understand it. He snapped back, asking what kind of bullshit logic that was. The hero explained it plainly. Demon kings always kidnapped the most famous princess they could find, basically screaming to the entire world that they were active and needed to be stopped. The hero grabbed Burj by the hair, asking if he was stupid. If it were him, he would have killed the king instead, but killing a king would throw the kingdom into chaos. Burj laughed weakly and said exactly. If a king was kidnapped, the humans hungry for the throne would tear each other apart. Their rage wouldn't be focused on him anymore, and without that concentrated hatred, he wouldn't grow as a demon king. It violated every rule of the standard. The hero continued, pointing out that when heroes didn't go to the tower, Burj sent monsters to villages to help them train. Naturally, the humans were grateful, and once they finally reached the tower, it only got better. The first floor was always stocked with weak monsters, perfect for grinding levels according to their abilities. Burj said he had planned everything carefully. He didn't want heroes dying early. The standard taught him to harvest as much energy as possible, and that was exactly what he did. The hero stepped on Burj's chest and yanked the sword out. Blood sprayed everywhere. Burj gasped for air and collapsed. The hero casually remarked that when a tower got boring, they just killed the demon king and waited for a new one to pop up somewhere else. It was nothing more than a hunting ground designed for heroes. He asked the others what they thought and raised his sword, thanking Burj for everything. Teeth grinding, Burj wondered why he had ever followed the standard. Being humiliated like this turned into entertainment. He refused to die in vain. He roared that he was a demon king, and a terrifying aura began leaking from his eyes. It didn't matter. His head was sliced clean off. As it flew through the air, Burj saw the heroes chatting casually. His head landed beside them, and he swore they would pay for insulting him. The hero warned the others not to touch the head. The horns were his. A purple rift formed within Burj's body. The hero stared down at it, confused. Burj's voice echoed as he vowed to sacrifice every last drop of life he had left. The hero's heart raced. He screamed for everyone to run. The explosion erased them. Heroes disintegrated like meat being stripped from bone. If Burj had known the standard was wrong, if he had known it allowed heroes to make fools of demon kings, he never would have followed it. Given another chance, he wouldn't waste a single moment. He would feed that garbage doctrine straight to the orcs. The tower exploded. Someone kept calling his name, over and over. Burge Diaz opened his eyes and found himself standing inside the Demon King Academy. Alive, confused, graduation day, someone told him to hurry onto the stage. The chairman stared at him, wondering why a genius like him was spacing out. A red badge was pinned to his chest, the symbol of a demon king. Graduates were told to ascend the podium. The oath was next, the standard of the demon king. Burge had memorized it so thoroughly he was sick of it. Every syllable burned into his mind. The same garbage that got him killed, the same bullshit that turned him into a toy. He was asked to read it. He asked if he really had to swear to that trash again. When told to begin, he refused. He shouted that he wouldn't swear to such bullshit. That following the standard was moronic and fucked up. That the doctrine was absolute trash and its creator deserved to die. The academy erupted. The greatest valedictorian in history had become the greatest lunatic of the century. A heavy hand slammed down on the table hard enough to crack the stone surface. The entire chamber went silent. The one who stood there radiating authority introduced himself without ceremony as Arkin, the Archduke of the Demon Realm. His presence alone made it clear that this wasn't a discussion anymore. He stared straight at Burge Diaz and said plainly that Burge could be executed on the spot for daring to insult the standard of the Demon King. However, given Burge's flawless academic record and his exceptional talent, Arkin said he would grant him one last chance. Burge only had to retract his statement and apologize to the entire Demon Realm, right now. If he refused, his assignment would be finalized immediately. Whispers spread through the chamber. Some said the destination was Arrain, the dimension where demon kings were sent to die. Others muttered that giving him a second chance was pointless, and that execution would be cleaner. Arkin continued, saying Burge was surely aware that Arrain was the worst dimension imaginable, a place where countless demon kings had lost their lives without exception. Burge didn't hesitate for even a second. He told Arkin to send him there anyway. He said he would come back alive after proving that the standard was complete dog shit. That was the final straw. Arkin roared that there would be no leniency. He formally ordered Burge's immediate deployment to Arrain. All privileges of being a valedictorian were revoked. No demon subordinates would accompany him. He would receive no benefits, no assistance, and no reinforcements until he completed his conquest. Furthermore, he was permanently banned from ever entering the demon realm again. Burge nodded. Honestly, he had expected as much after causing that scene. What surprised him was how relieved he felt. Arrain was the land of heroes, the very place where he had died. Even before his regression, he had chosen that dimension himself, believing that the hardest difficulty was the only challenge worthy of the best. That arrogance had killed him. In Arrain, countless heroes had already figured out how to exploit the standard of the Demon King and turn it against them. This time, he wouldn't be fooled again. He landed on the northern continent, deep within a massive mountain range. The terrain was brutal, jagged peaks stretching endlessly in every direction. Burge looked around and laughed under his breath. He said he wouldn't fall for the same tricks twice. This time, he would be the one using the system against them. If this world ran on standards, then he would rewrite them. He would call it the hero standard. Elsewhere, another graduation ceremony was wrapping up. Gordon was cleaning up nearby, muttering to himself that things had gone surprisingly well. He was the valedictorian of the Demon King Adjutant Academy. If the Demon King Academy trained kings, then the Adjutant Academy raised the demons who served under them. Two students standing behind him whispered that being valedictorian really paid off. Gordon would get to serve Burge Diaz, the top demon king of the year. One fish-like demon broke down crying, saying that if only he had studied harder, he could have been the one serving Burge. Gordon sighed and said the demon kings they were serving weren't bad, but they weren't even close to Burge's level. He was from the great Black Dragon clan, a once-in-a-millennium genius. Graduating in the same year as him was practically a blessing. With Burge, conquering any dimension would be easy. Then Burge had gone and insulted the standard. That was the moment Gordon realized he was about to serve a complete lunatic. And of course, fate had a sense of humor. The top adjutant served the top demon king, which meant Gordon was sent to Arrain too. As he was teleported, Gordon asked himself what kind of cruel joke this was. Burge was inspecting his surroundings when Gordon appeared. Burge frowned and said he thought they made it clear no demons would follow him. Gordon stared at him like he'd lost his mind. Burge shrugged and said it looked like they gave him the bare minimum anyway. He greeted Gordon casually, saying it was good to see him. Gordon immediately demanded to know why he had done that back at the academy. Burge asked what he meant. Gordon snapped that insulting the standard publicly was insane. No matter how many complaints he had, that was crossing every line imaginable. Of all places, both of them were now stuck in a reign, a death sentence. Gordon started pacing, grabbing at his hair and telling Burge to calm down before he lost it entirely. Burge blinked and asked if his hair was really the biggest problem right now. That was when Burge noticed something odd. Gordon hadn't been like this before. In Burge's past life, Gordon had been far bolder when they first met. He was different now. Nervous. Fragile. Burge said the situation had changed, so he understood. Even if he tried explaining that he had regressed, Gordon would probably just think he was even crazier. Gordon took a few deep breaths and finally apologized for his outburst. He straightened himself and said he would fulfill his duty as Burge's adjutant. Burge nodded and said that was fine. Gordon immediately switched to business mode and reminded him that according to the standard, the first objective was to build a tower. It couldn't be hidden or placed in terrain that was too difficult to access. Heroes needed to find it. Gordon gestured to the surrounding mountains and said this place was terrible for that. Humans would struggle just to reach it. They would have to move somewhere else before building anything. Burge didn't answer. Instead, he crouched down and placed something into the ground. Gordon froze. That was a tower seed. If planted and fed with a demon king's blood, it would instantly raise a tower. Gordon shouted that this violated the standard completely and demanded to know if Burge had abandoned his pride as a demon king. Burge stood up calmly. He said he understood Gordon's reaction. Faith didn't disappear easily, especially when it had been drilled into someone their entire life. Usually it took death or something just as severe. He clenched his fist and told Gordon to listen carefully. The standard was dog shit, especially in a rain. The ground began to shake violently. The entire mountain range trembled as the seed reacted to Burge's blood. A massive circle spread across the earth, glowing ominously. Burge said the reason demon kings kept dying here was simple. Every time a tower was smashed by heroes, humans learned how it worked. They reverse-engineered the system. The standard didn't function in this world anymore. Calling it the Demon King standard was wrong. This place ran on the hero standard. A status window appeared, confirming the tower recognized its user. Race, Black Flame Dragon. Name. Burge Dea's registration complete. The tower began to rise. Gordon stared at it in disbelief. Burge told him it was time to go inside. The moment they crossed the threshold, Gordon felt something was off. The first floor of the tower was completely empty. No monsters, no traps, no lurking presence at all, just cold stone and silence stretching in every direction. Gordon frowned and said towers were supposed to be filled with weak monsters on the lower floors. That was how heroes trained and adjusted. This place, though, was completely barren. He hesitated, then added that maybe this was the kind of tower given to a demon king with no perks or support. They moved upward. Second floor, empty. Third floor, empty. By the time they reached the fifth floor, Gordon didn't even bother commenting anymore. This was Burge's chamber, the core of the tower, yet even here there was nothing. Gordon exhaled slowly and said that since the tower was already built, they couldn't undo that mistake. From here on out, they had to at least follow the standard properly, starting with Rule 2. The target needed to be a high-profile individual close to the line of succession. That was the most efficient way to harvest rage and sorrow. Burge told him to speak freely. Gordon said the nearest kingdom to their mountain range was Quartzon. Targeting a high-ranking princess from the closest kingdom would allow them to absorb demonic energy quickly and stabilize their footing. He admitted Burge might refuse, given everything he'd said before, but it was still the optimal move. Burge nodded. He said he already had a princess in mind. Gordon blinked, then said he would assist however he could. Burge told him to remain behind and guard the tower. Leaving the Demon King's lair unattended was never a good idea. Gordon straightened up and said he wasn't valedictorian for nothing. He had just been overwhelmed by graduation stress earlier. This situation could still be salvaged. Before Burge left, Gordon asked who he planned to bring. Burge said the place he was heading to wasn't nearby at all. It was a nation located at the southernmost tip of the continent, the furthest possible point from the tower. The Hildern Kingdom. Burge flew alone. When he arrived, he stopped outside a quiet window deep within the palace. Inside, a young woman stood gazing outward. When she noticed him hovering there, her expression barely changed. She was the 13th princess, a royal with almost no presence. Burge said he was here for her. The princess tilted her head and asked who he was. Burge answered that he was the demon king who had come to kidnap her. She laughed. She asked if he could even handle her. Burge froze for a moment. That was a strange thing to say. She was taking him far too lightly. He said of course he could. She smiled and said she would go quietly then. Burge frowned and asked what she was planning. She replied that she had been born a princess, so she always thought a day like this might come. She had considered it many times. Burge said that if she thought she could trick him by acting calm, then she should wake up. He wasn't desperate enough to fall for something that shallow. She said she hadn't planned anything like that. How could she have known a demon king would show up today? Burge admitted that was fair. Still, something about her felt wrong. She asked if he was ready to take her. So he did. They returned to the tower without resistance. Gordon greeted them on the first floor, clearly shaken. Burge said they could let her stay somewhere on the fourth floor, tucked into a corner. Gordon asked why not a prison cell. Burge said she came along quietly. He would provide a small amount of convenience. Gordon nodded but said he had something important to tell him. Burge asked what it was, but Gordon insisted they deal with the princess first. On the fourth floor, the princess looked around slowly. She said it was cold and hard. No bed, no pillow, no blankets, no attendants, no garden, nothing from the kingdom. She smiled faintly and said she finally understood that she had truly been kidnapped, and she didn't think it was that bad. Once they left her there, Gordon confirmed that the invitation they had received came from the Tower of Beasts. Burge scoffed and said that was bullshit. It was probably just them hazing the new Demon King. Normally, Demon Kings never cooperated. Their pride didn't allow it, but this dimension was different. The heroes had crushed that pride over and over again, forcing Demon Kings to band together. In his previous life, Burge had ignored them entirely, dismissing them as weaklings. This time, he figured a brief exchange wouldn't hurt. Draxen greeted him at the Tower of Beasts, proudly announcing that he had ruled this place for 70 years. He said he'd heard the new Demon King was a nut job who insulted the standard, but seeing him in person, Burge didn't look like anything special. Burge asked if he'd been called here just to fight and told him to get to the point. Draxen laughed and said Arkin ordered him to observe Burge closely upon arrival. Burge muttered that the noisy old vampire was still holding a grudge. Draxen's smile vanished. He asked how Burge dared to refer to an archduke that way. He dropped his food onto the floor and told Burge to lick it up. If he did, Draxen would forgive his rudeness. Burge said Draxen already knew why he was here. Draxen admitted it. Burge had insulted the standard. Burge replied that according to that same standard, demon kings weren't supposed to kill each other. But since he was openly trash-talking it, there was no reason to follow such a trivial rule. Pressure flooded the room. Draxen's confidence cracked. He hurriedly confessed that Arkin ordered him to monitor whether Burge kidnapped a princess. If he failed to report success within a month, his authority would be stripped. Burge said it was a waste of time. He had already kidnapped a princess, one that suited his taste. Back at the tower, Gordon said that display had been true Demon King dignity. Burge brushed it off, saying it was nothing. For now, they couldn't do anything else. They needed to prepare. He told Gordon to check on the princess's condition. He needed to determine her value. As Gordon left, Burge rubbed his temples. If all Demon Kings were like Draxen, this was going to be annoying. The backlash from insulting the standard was worse than he'd expected. Still, even if given another chance, he would do it all again. Submitting to that dog-shit doctrine was worse than death. This time, he would build a foundation properly, slowly, safely. He expected only a few hundred demonic energy points from kidnapping such a low-ranking princess. Then the system updated, over 13,000 points. Burge stared at the number, stunned. He asked how the hell that happened. Before Burge could even finish processing the absurd number of points, a video message notification appeared. It came from the Tower of Beasts. He clicked it without much thought, muttering that their little system was surprisingly polished. Draxen appeared on the screen, smiling like nothing unpleasant had happened earlier. He congratulated Burge, saying that despite their meeting not going well, he genuinely wanted to praise him. What Burge had done was no small feat. Pulling something like that off wasn't easy at all. Draxen said he was impressed and casually asked if insulting the standard had been the trick. That was when Burge knew something was seriously wrong. Gordon came sprinting back, panic all over his face. He shouted that the fourth floor was a complete disaster. Burge immediately headed down. The moment he stepped onto the floor, he stopped dead. The entire space had transformed into a lush garden. Flowers bloomed across the stone floor, vines crawled along the walls, and butterflies drifted lazily through the air. The cold, lifeless interior of the tower was gone, replaced by vibrant greenery that shouldn't have been possible. Burge asked what the hell this was. A status window appeared, stating that the floor was undergoing naturalization. The princess stood at the center, surrounded by gentle spirits. She smiled faintly and asked if he was finally here. Burge stared at her in disbelief. He asked if she had created nature inside the tower. This wasn't just elemental control, it required handling all 4 major elements at once. He muttered that she definitely belonged to the 13th princess's castle. Then he stopped. In his memories, there had only been one elemental capable of this. He said she wasn't the 13th princess. She smiled and said that, as expected, he had mistaken her for Alina. Understanding hit him like a hammer. She introduced herself as Erin Hildern, the first princess of the kingdom. Back at the Hildern kingdom, chaos erupted. The crown princess had been kidnapped. The king slammed his fist down and demanded to know how anyone dared take his most beloved daughter. He ordered the mobilization of the strongest heroes in the entire army. They were to cut off the demon king's head and bring her back immediately. Back in the tower, Burge recalled her earlier words. She had asked if he thought he could handle her. Now it made sense. He said he'd heard that the genius spirit summoner of Hildern was overflowing with mana. There was no way he would have noticed. He asked how she had deceived him. She held up a ring and said she could conceal her power as long as she wore it. It was a treasure passed down through the royal family for generations. She then asked if his curiosity had been satisfied and whether he would send her back now. Burge said that if he did, he would become a laughingstock. No kingdom feared a coward. If no one feared him, gathering demonic energy would become nearly impossible. He had no choice but to push forward. A warning flashed across the status window. A large number of hostile entities were moving toward his location. The demonic energy counter jumped again, 19,000 points. They had identified him. Burge said that nothing changed just because she wasn't the 13th princess. She was still his hostage. At the Hildern kingdom, the king shouted orders to prepare the heroes. They would move immediately. The demon king's head would be taken. Some of the men still hadn't figured out which demon king was responsible. Scouts had already been sent out, and they said it would be best to wait just a little longer, but the king wasn't having it. He demanded answers immediately. The crown princess had already been kidnapped, so how could they still be hesitating like this? One of the men spoke up, saying something about how strange the situation was. Recently, the demon king of lust had kidnapped the crown prince of another nation, and that incident had ended with the heroes storming in and wiping him out. After something like that, another demon king going as far as kidnapping a crown princess felt strange. Too strange, everyone slowly realized he had a point, and even her father began to tremble as the thought settled in his chest. If that was true, then this had to be someone new. Another man reported that traces of teleportation magic circles had been discovered. The estimated destination was north, somewhere around the mountain range. At that, her father completely lost his composure. Back at the tower, Gordon mentioned that the armies would soon begin moving, asking whether it wouldn't be too much for him to handle when they arrived. Burr only smiled, saying it would be fine. The kingdom couldn't even mobilize its national army properly. As they talked strategy, Burge explained that because their territories were so far apart, it was unlikely the many nations in between would open a path for an army to pass through. Not every country would be willing to cooperate. In the end, their only real option was to rely on the Hero Guild. Her father immediately ordered them to contact the guild. At the guild itself, heroes stood around the quest board, staring but clearly uninterested. None of them wanted to go anywhere near the mountain range, a place crawling with calamity rank monsters. Someone muttered that the Hero Guild wouldn't move anyway. Heroes were trash, only caring about money. They wouldn't risk their lives unless the reward was worth it. That was exactly why this place had been chosen as a base. Gordon looked surprised. Even if his tactics were unconventional, it felt like he understood this world far too well, almost as if he'd lived in it before. And he was right. Back at the palace, the king was furious. He shouted about how not a single hero was stepping forward, even though they were supposed to be symbols of courage. He called them cowards. One of the men calmly replied that most heroes now carefully calculated profit before moving. They rarely acted without certainty. It would take time for them to form a party and even longer to arrive. On top of that, the Demon King didn't currently have enough demonic energy to face a full hero army. He knew firsthand how terrifying their numbers could be. He told Gordon to go contact Draxon. He needed to sell his demonic energy in exchange for human currency. Gordon agreed at first, then froze, suddenly realizing what he had just heard. He began shouting, saying that demonic energy could break the limits of a species, activate the tower's functions, and even summon monsters from the demon realm. Why would he trade something like that for human money? Burr explained calmly that Draxon would pay an enormous sum, and in his current state, the demonic energy wouldn't be enough to stop the heroes anyway. But with money, he could do something else, something at a fortress near the mountain range called Horton. The gates opened as guards stopped a man and asked what his business was. He said he was a mercenary. They questioned him, wondering what kind of mercenary would enter the mountains alone and come back alive. He handed them a gold coin. It was Burge. As the two guards started whispering about splitting the bribe, he said he couldn't look around the city alone and needed a guide. He headed toward the headquarters of the Red Hawk Mercenary Corps. Inside, one man asked their captain whether they shouldn't leave soon. The captain asked why, saying this place was perfect. Soldiers killed monsters daily and they collected the leftovers. It was practically a gold mine. Another man brought up rumors about a new demon king building a tower in the mountains. The captain scoffed, saying it was obviously fake. Demon kings built towers where heroes could reach them easily. Someone added that the demon king had kidnapped the crown princess of Hildur. The captain laughed again, asking if they really believed a demon king would travel all the way across the continent just for that. Another man said the hero guild had refused an enormous reward after hearing the destination. The captain brushed it off, saying the kingdom would offer even more soon enough. Heroes would never refuse that. Then a voice appeared behind them, saying that was exactly what he thought too. The man nearly jumped out of his skin and fell to the floor as everyone spun around, yelling and demanding to know who he was. He said they seemed well-informed, which made them perfect guides. Only one of them needed to stay, everyone else should get lost. They charged at him immediately, shouting that he had a death wish. In an instant, he dropped all of them. A massive man lunged at him with a hammer, but Burge caught it with one hand and grinned. The man instantly realized he had made a mistake. Crossbowmen fired from above, but Burge grabbed the giant and hurled him like a bowling ball, wiping them out. The captain watched in horror, realizing this man was a monster. Outside, people heard the commotion but assumed it was internal fighting. In truth, the entire group had been annihilated, leaving only the captain alive. Burge told him not to be afraid. If he answered properly, he would live. Trembling, the captain agreed to do anything. Burge asked where the slave market was. As they walked, the captain explained that the slaves were only humans and asked if that was acceptable. Burge handed him a pouch full of gold, saying there must be rarer goods. The captain's eyes lit up immediately, promising to guide him there at once. Burge noted how quickly the man changed after seeing money. Humans really weren't that different from demons. They went deeper inside until the captain announced they had arrived. Earlier, Gordon had asked why he was buying slaves. Burge explained that humans had captured other races as well. If possible, he wanted an elf, someone known for their integrity. Such a being would make an excellent spy. Back in the present, the slave trader asked what kind of slave he wanted. Burge pointed at an elf and said he'd take him. He added that the captain would be paying. The captain tried to object but immediately gave in, saying it was fine. Burge said he needed to check something and told them to wait outside. They warned him the elf might go berserk, but he said that was fine. He'd compensate if anything happened. Inside, the restraints were removed and the elf glared at him, demanding to know why a demon would come here. Burge offered him a chance to take revenge on humans. The elf laughed bitterly, saying a demon's words were no more trustworthy than a human's. Burge said that if the elf served him faithfully for 50 years, he would grant him freedom afterward. For an elf, 50 years was nothing, far better than humiliation at human hands. The elf pointed out that demons were responsible for trying to destroy the world tree. How could he trust someone like that? And why would a demon even extend a hand to an elf? Burge said he had a point. Then he swore upon the great demon king's cannon that he would never harm the world tree and would keep his word. The elf froze, recognizing that oath as sacred, equal to the world tree itself. He agreed on one condition, that Burge swear in return. Burge accepted. The elf introduced himself as Grenadier of the Maple tribe and said he would serve faithfully. When Burge revealed that he himself was the Demon King, Grenada burst into laughter, grabbing him and saying that was impossible. Why would a Demon King come personally to buy a slave? Burge explained that the further he moved from the tower, the weaker he became. That only made Grenada laugh harder. If he truly was the Demon King, then he would serve him for 100 years instead of 50. The scene shifted to the 5th floor of the tower. Burge repeated the contract terms. Grenada exploded, calling it fraud. The tower was nearly empty, nothing on the first 3 floors, and the 4th was just a glorified garden. What kind of Demon King lived in a place like this? He said the heroes would wipe him out in under a year. Burge reminded him that they had made a contract. Grenada admitted that the mana alone was suffocating. The monsters avoided the tower not because it was empty, but because they feared its master. He swore his loyalty and said that if the Demon King came personally, then he must have an important task. Burge calmly told him to start by cooking. Grenada froze, completely confused. Grenada stood there completely confused, staring at Burge as if he'd misheard him. He was supposed to be part of some grand plan, not cooking. Still, he didn't dare argue. As he started preparing the food, he noticed someone standing nearby. It was a woman. She asked if he was cooking and said she was going to help with some vegetable bread. They headed to the dining hall on the 5th floor. As they sat down to eat, he asked if she was from Hilderin. Burge confirmed it. She was the crown princess. Grenada, stunned, asks if Burge had completely lost his mind, kidnapping the crown princess and bringing her here of all places. With nothing but empty floors and barely any defenses, how was he planning to stop a hero if one showed up? Burge calmly replied that this was exactly why he had brought Grenada here. Burge casually complimented the food. Ernan smiled, saying she helped too. Grenada, however, could only stare, completely lost about what was happening. Later, on the 4th floor, Grenada asked if he was supposed to fight the heroes. Burge told him no. If a hero made it inside the tower, it was already over, especially if they managed to break through. Instead, he wanted Grenada to disrupt the human world from the outside. That meant becoming a spy. But first, Burge needed to check his skills. Grenada frowned, asking how he was supposed to fight a Demon King inside his own tower. Burge replied that he would use no magi and only one hand. In return, he would reduce the contract back to 50 years. Grenada immediately accepted, warning him not to take it back. He said he'd do everything he could to take his head, then corrected himself and said he meant fight him. He charged forward, launching a relentless barrage of attacks. Burge blocked every single strike with just one hand, exactly as promised. He commented that Grenada moved well for someone who had lived as a slave for so long. The way he absorbed mana from the floor to enhance his body was very elf-like. Grenada responded that no normal elf could reach this level and that Burge had chosen the wrong opponent. He activated a spell, wrapping vines around Burge's leg, then lunged forward, declaring that he had found an opening and would return the contract to 50 years. Burge looked down, slightly surprised, then smiled. He admitted that Grenada was good enough to be useful, but reminded him that he shouldn't forget who he was fighting. He said he would not use demonic energy now, but would control his strength enough so it don't kill him. Grenada shouted that he needed a moment to change his pants. The tower suddenly trembled. The scene shifted back to the mercenary headquarters. Burge stood there once again, and this time the captain greeted him with deep respect, saying it was an honor to see him again. Burge said he wanted to hire the mercenary corps for a full year. The captain immediately asked how much he was offering. The men who had been beaten earlier muttered that they should quit, but Burge casually dropped a massive bag of coins in front of them. Instantly, their attitudes flipped, claiming the beating had been worth it. The captain scolded them, calling them idiots, then eagerly accepted the offer. Burge suggested they also bring in one more man to deliver his orders. The captain agreed immediately, but some of the men hesitated, saying letting in a stranger was dangerous. At that moment, Grenada walked in, covered in bruises and bandages. He introduced himself politely. The mercenaries stared at him, then suddenly felt a strange sense of kinship. Before they knew it, they were crying and hugging him like long-lost brothers. Burge commented that while they looked sloppy, they were mercenaries from Eretz, and it would be hard to find better talent. More importantly, they were easy to handle, because they were all idiots. At that moment, the only hero who could respond to the situation was Hill, the one who had slain the Demon King of Lust. Burge told them that their first mission was to investigate Hero Hillen. Their expressions sharpened, excitement returning to their faces. Back at the tower, Burge said that since Grenada was handling the hero side of things, it was time for him to grow stronger. He explained that the system's points could be used to reinforce the tower or strengthen himself. Since he had sold all his demonic energy, the fastest way to regain power was through spirit grass. Spirit grass was formed when mana crystals absorbed natural energy over long periods of time. Consuming it granted immense power. Due to the violent mana storms and the presence of calamity-ranked monsters, no humans ventured into the mountain range. As a result, spirit grass there grew purer than anywhere else. For demons, it wasn't as good as demonic energy, but it was still valuable. He told Gordon that they needed to find some. Gordon immediately objected, saying that searching without preparation was reckless. Finding it was like searching for a needle in a desert. Monsters weren't any different from beasts, they would attack if they sensed weakness. Burge said he wasn't worried about monsters, he could kill them easily. The real problem was finding the grass. Gordon pointed out that unless they had a detector with exceptional mana sensitivity, it would be impossible. Right on cue, Aaron knocked on the door, asking if they were busy. Everything clicked. As they left the tower, Aaron was visibly excited, and the spirits around her were too. She said she had been bored for a long time and was glad to finally go out. She reminded him that he had promised to let her decorate the 4th floor however she wanted. He agreed, saying that as long as they found the grass, she could do whatever she liked. She'd already redecorated most of it anyway, so he wasn't sure how much more she planned to change. She said she hadn't expected to ever leave the tower again and was glad she came. He put his arm around her shoulders, lifted her up, and told her to hold on tight. She screamed as they took off, squeezing her eyes shut from the pressure. When she finally opened them, she froze. The world stretched endlessly beneath them. She said that the day she was kidnapped, it had been dark, so she never realized how vast the world really was. Her life had been nothing but training, studying, and repeating the same routines over and over. She said that no human had ever flown over the mountain range before, meaning she was probably the first. Burge reminded her of what she needed to do and called her princess. She told him to stop and use her name instead, since they'd be together for a while. He asked if she'd lost her mind and warned her not to forget her position, threatening to send her to the dungeon if she pushed her luck. She apologized immediately. He told her to use the spirits to find the grass. She did, sending them flying in all directions. He commented that it would take a long time to search such a massive area, but spirits, being mana themselves, would find it far faster than humans ever could. Moments later, she excitedly told him they had found it. He was surprised by how fast it happened. Up ahead, spirit grass glowed faintly, surrounded by monsters that had reached it first. Burge explained that monsters were descendants of demons who had turned their backs on the demon realm. If they still held even a shred of pride, they would obey his command and leave. They refused. He laughed, saying Gordon had been right, expecting reason from beasts was foolish. He decided to burn them all. The monsters charged, roaring as they rushed forward. Burge extended his hand, firing a beam of power that ripped through them, turning their bodies to ash. More charged toward Aaron, and he instantly moved in front of her, erasing them without effort. She stared in disbelief. Even feral orcs could hunt ogres, yet they couldn't even approach him. The power of a demon king was far beyond what she'd imagined. Soon, the area became a graveyard of scorched remains. She approached the spirit grass and said the purity was extremely high. He warned her not to touch it, it was his. She pouted, so he promised to give her one if she found another. Motivated, she searched eagerly, but even after exhausting herself, they couldn't find another. On the way back, he admitted that at first he thought keeping her was a mistake, but she'd proven very useful. He draped his jacket over her shoulders. Gordon then appeared, saying a message had arrived from Grenada. Burge noted that it was fast. Grenada reported that starting with Hero Hillen, 32 others had departed from the capital. They were following the typical hero pattern, forming parties, growing stronger through quests, and slowly approaching. Their strength would continue to increase. Gordon said he had prepared countermeasures. Burge glanced at them and immediately dismissed the plan as dog shit. This time, he wouldn't interfere directly. Interference only made heroes stronger. Instead, Grenada would join their journey and earn their trust. Gordon sighed, saying he wasn't following the canon again. The tower alone couldn't stop the heroes. Burge told him not to worry. He planned to reinforce the tower using dwarves. Gordon nearly lost his mind. First humans, then elves, and now dwarves. This was turning into some kind of employment agency. He warned that it wasn't a good look. Burge released a wave of mana from his fist, silencing him instantly. He clarified that he wasn't recruiting dwarves to fight, he needed their tools. He asked Gordon to think about it. If heroes opened the tower expecting weak monsters, what would happen if dozens of cannons fired at once? Gordon admitted that no one would expect something so insane. Then he noticed Burge was gone. Panic set in as he realized what that meant. Burge had already arrived at an underground dwarven city. A massive dwarf hammered away at a forge. He was the finest blacksmith in the city, Loger, and he was about to be kidnapped. The scene shifted to the underground dwarven city of Wolfner, a place carved straight into the stone itself, glowing faintly with embedded crystals that lit the massive caverns from within. Deep in its heart, the sound of hammers striking metal echoed without pause, steady and powerful. At the center of that noise stood Loger, the greatest dwarven blacksmith alive. And right now, he had unknowingly become the next target on the Demon King's abduction list. Before his regression, Burge Deas had fought countless dwarves, but this was the first time he had ever actually stepped foot inside their city. At the entrance, he casually bribed the guard with human gold and asked, almost lazily, where he could find the best blacksmith around. The dwarf smirked as he pocketed the coins. For a human, you sure know how to do business. With such a small bribe, directions came easily. Go inside the city, find the massive hole, take the lift. They'll check your identity and assign you a floor, 2 layers of security, no intruders allowed. Burge didn't bother with any of that. Suppressing his demonic presence completely, he simply dropped straight down to the lowest level. From there, he walked calmly toward the deepest chamber of Wolfner, the true heart of the city, where the legendary blacksmith worked. The first thing Burge noticed was the technique. Molten metal shimmered with mana so smoothly it looked like the flames themselves were dancing. For a brief moment, he genuinely wondered if this really was the best blacksmith alive. He figured he could always confirm that after kidnapping him. He moved in like lightning, reaching out to grab the dwarf and escape in one swift motion, but his target was anything but ordinary. A wave of fire erupted from the forge, swallowing Burge in scorching heat. Without hesitation, a massive hammer followed, swinging straight toward him. That flame, it carried a trace of demonic power. Suspicious. Burge caught the hammer with one hand. Calmly, he asked, "Are you a hero?" The dwarf lifted his chin proudly. "I am a hero. How dare a demon enter dwarven land?" he continued coldly. "You will not leave here alive." Burge grinned, wearing that familiar Demon King smile. "For someone who talks that big, you're pretty weak. Also, correction. I'm not a demon, I'm the Demon King." With overwhelming strength, he slammed the hammer into the ground and grabbed the dwarf by the throat, lifting him off his feet. Guards rushed toward the chamber after hearing the commotion, but when they arrived, it was already empty. Panic spread instantly. A demon intruder, the hero Loger, had been kidnapped. High above the city on a terrace, Burge warned his captive in a low voice, "Make a sound and I'll kill you." Still trembling, Loger demanded answers. Why was the Demon King here? Was he after the dwarven princess? Burge dismissed the idea immediately. He had no interest in dwarven royalty. What he wanted was information about the secret tunnels beneath the city, underground routes known only to blacksmiths for emergencies. Loger assumed this was how the princess would be kidnapped, and honestly he couldn't stop Burge even if he wanted to. The truth was simple. He talked big, but he was terrified of Demon Kings. Still, he refused to answer. So Burge leaned in and whispered his threat. "Fine, I'll kidnap your princess, then let you go. Everyone will believe you sold her out to save your own life. Imagine the rumors, the shame, the torture that'll follow." Everyone already knew Loger wasn't particularly brave. If such a rumor spread, no one would doubt it. His life would turn into hell. Burge gave him one last choice: walk with me or sell out your princess and pray. Loger stayed silent, but inside his head he was already scheming, thinking about how to survive while still handing over the princess. A greedy little bastard. To seal it, Burge made a vow. "On the Demon King's standard, I guarantee your safety if you cooperate. For dwarves, such an oath was sacred. A Demon King would never break it." Loger's attitude flipped instantly. He became cooperative, obedient, almost cheerful. Burge nearly gagged at the sight. Meanwhile, deep inside the city, Princess Louise paced anxiously. Loger had vanished while crafting her weapon. The guards explained he'd been taken, but that only made her angrier. "Shut your mouths," she snapped. "He's a hero. How could a hero be kidnapped?" One guard nervously tried to reason with her. Your Highness, he is a hero, but he's also a terrible fighter. That earned him a murderous glare. Find him. If you fail, I'll take all your heads myself. No one dared argue. Deep inside Loger's hidden tunnel system, Burge was rapidly losing patience. The passage was so narrow that he was forced to walk directly behind the dwarf the entire way. Far too close? Move faster, Burge growled. If I have to stare at this disgusting view any longer, I'll burn this tunnel down. Loger laughed nervously, just a bit more. These tunnels weren't built for tall people. After what felt like hours, they finally emerged outside the city. Loger brushed himself off in relief. That's it, my job's done, I'll be going now. Burge transformed instantly. Wings of shadow spread wide, swallowing the moonlight. What kind of bullshit are you spouting? Loger froze. You swore on the Demon King's standard, Burge shrugged. Trash vows don't mean shit to me. Just like that, Loger officially became the newest entry on the Demon King's ragebait list. Panic overtook him immediately. Maybe selling out the princess really would have been smarter. Wait, I'm useful, he blurted out. No one rivals my metallurgy. I can craft anything you want. Burge frowned. How does a hero sell himself this easily? Morals didn't matter to Loger anymore. Survival did. Then swear loyalty to me, Burge ordered. Loger smashed his forehead into the ground without hesitation. I swear. Thank you for your mercy. Of course, inside his head, he was already planning his escape. Two bad plans don't matter when you're unconscious. Moments later, Loger woke up in a serene garden, surrounded by spirits, dizzy and terrified. Gordon was already pacing nearby. You kidnapped a hero, he snapped. A dwarf hero. Burge motioned for silence as Granada appeared on a floating screen. My lord, did you seriously bring a dwarf inside? Report later, Burge cut him off. Princess Ernan stepped forward, ignoring the chaos. She studied Loger calmly. Did you come to rescue me, hero? Probably not. Loger barely understood what was happening. Why am I here? You said you'd keep me safe, Burge smirked. That's why you're still breathing. I knocked you out and carried you here. I couldn't trust what a panicking dwarf might do. Loger forced an awkward laugh. Right, wonderful. Burge didn't waste time. Your first assignment? Install cannons on the first floor. If heroes show up, I want them erased. Loger swallowed hard. Cannons, right, of course. The scene shifted to the hero preparation station, where the air buzzed with tension and anticipation. A holographic communications screen flickered to life, projecting the image of Granada as he delivered his report with practiced calm. According to the latest intelligence, rumors were spreading fast among the heroes. The newly emerged Demon King was believed to wield black flames, and in response, many heroes had begun equipping themselves with fire-resistant gear, preparing for what they assumed was inevitable combat. Granada continued, mentioning another rumor that had begun circulating. Many heroes believed the Demon King had refrained from deploying demonic beasts out of fear. From their point of view, the prolonged silence wasn't strategy. It was weakness. Burge said that the heroes clearly hadn't lost their killing intent yet. Whether they were chasing glory through battle or wealth through conquest made no difference. In the end, none of them would gain anything from this journey. They would lose everything. Eventually, they won't be able to grow. Before ending the call, Burge issued a final order. Granada was to continue monitoring the heroes closely and report any changes immediately. Granada acknowledged and cut the transmission. Left alone, Granada reflected silently. By deliberately withholding demonic beasts, Burge Diaz was quietly crushing the heroes' morale and twisting their expectations. More than that, it was becoming disturbingly clear that this Demon King understood human psychology far too well. Granada wondered if a Demon King like him had ever existed before. The thought sent a rare chill through him, followed almost immediately by relief. Burge wasn't his enemy. The scene shifted again, returning to Burge's tower. Burge issued a direct order to Loger Friedrich. Fire cannons were to be installed on the first floor. However, there was one strict condition. Mana stones were not to be used. Loger panicked instantly. He protested that constructing cannons without mana stones was nearly impossible, and even if they could be built, they wouldn't be effective against heroes. Finding a solution wasn't optional. It was Loger's responsibility. Burge explained calmly that heroes were favored by the dimension itself. Their energy perception was absurdly sharp. Any trap powered by mana stones would be detected long before activation. That was exactly why mana stones were forbidden. Loger tried to argue again. Burge's expression darkened. A sphere of black magic formed calmly in his hand. He reminded Loger why he'd been brought here in the first place. He was considered the greatest blacksmith alive, and if he failed to meet expectations, Burge had no shortage of replacements. Terrified, Lojer broke down. His voice shook as he hurriedly admitted there was another method. Burge's lips curled into a thin smile. He remarked that Lojer should have mentioned it sooner. Lojer explained that he had once invented a device capable of completely concealing mana traces. Developing it had taken 3 full years. The finished prototype still remained in his workshop back in Wolfner. Burge's face hardened immediately. He demanded to know whether this was just another desperate lie. Crying and trembling, Lojer swore it was the truth. After a brief pause, Burge decided to believe him, but not without insurance. He fastened a purple rune-etched collar around Lojer's neck. When Lojer asked what it was, Burge explained casually that it was a magical restraint capable of separating his head from his body instantly, activated with a single gesture. The collar also distorted perception, preventing others from clearly seeing Lojer's face. If Lojer ever attempted to remove it, Burge would interpret that as an escape attempt. And then, he would die. Lojer collapsed in fear, swearing he would never try to remove it no matter what happened. After issuing his orders, Burge departed with Lojer. Together, they traveled across several kingdoms, gathering rare materials and mana-compatible resources. The journey lasted nearly a full month. Throughout it all, Burge stored everything inside his spatial pocket, carefully preserving every item needed for his preparations. When they finally returned to Wolfner, chaos had already taken hold. A massive boulder crashed down near a group of dwarves, shattering stone and sending debris everywhere. At the center of the destruction stood Princess Louise Verf, her fury impossible to miss. She shouted that it had already been a month and a half, yet Lojer still hadn't been found. She berated the dwarves for their incompetence and demanded to know how much longer she was expected to wait. Their forces were investigating every passage, but it was highly likely that he had already escaped the city. Louise snapped immediately. Of course he would have fled. It would have been idiotic to stay. She stated with absolute certainty that Lojer had been kidnapped. In a sudden burst of violence, she grabbed the old dwarf by the face and lifted him off the ground. Coldly, she declared that she would grant them 2 weeks. If the kidnapper wasn't found by then, every last one of them would die. Terrified, the dwarf swore they would succeed. Louise released him and barked orders at the soldiers, commanding them to collapse every tunnel Lojer had ever created. The dwarves scrambled to obey without hesitation. As the soldiers rushed off, it became clear that Louise's physique was anything but ordinary. At that moment, a hidden section of the wall shifted silently. One of Lojer's secret tunnels opened behind her, nearly soundless. Louise sensed it instantly and spun around, eyes narrowing. Because of the interference effect, she couldn't identify the man who emerged. But she recognized the tunnel immediately. Only Lojer knew of those passages. Her voice rang cold as she demanded to know if it was him. Lojer froze, panic seized him, and after a brief struggle, he barely managed to speak her title. Louise cracked her knuckles, fury flashing across her face. She snarled that the bastard had dared to come back alive. Golden vines of aura flared violently around her as she accused him of hiding because he didn't want to forge her weapon. Tears streamed down Lojer's face as he desperately denied it, insisting she had misunderstood everything. That only made her angrier. She reminded him sharply that she was a princess and accused him of insulting her by claiming she was mistaken. From that moment on, she declared, he would be her slave, forging weapons for her for the rest of his life. Golden aura surged around her fist as she pulled it back. Before anything else, she would punish him for running away. Before her punch could land, a violent blast erupted between them. Princess Louise was hurled backward, slamming into the ground. She planted a hand down and regained her balance instantly as dust filled the chamber. When the dust settled, Burge Diaz stepped forward calmly. "Retrieve the equipment," he ordered Lojer flatly. Louise glared at him, unable to discern his identity through the interference. She demanded to know who he was and why he was protecting a dwarf. Burge replied without emotion. He was simply the master of the blacksmith she had been extorting. Louise exploded with rage and leapt into the air, shouting that the blacksmith was her slave and would forge her weapon forever. Their fists met again and again in midair, each collision releasing violent shockwaves that tore through the surrounding space. In the middle of the relentless barrage, Burge Diaz spotted a brief opening and swung his leg toward Louise's neck. To his surprise, she caught the strike with one hand. The sheer strength behind her grip made his eyes narrow. Before he could fully recover, Louise countered with a brutal punch that sent him flying upward, his body smashing into the ceiling above. She turned her head slightly and coldly told Loger that it was his turn now. That was when Burge reappeared. He seized Louise by the head and slammed her straight down. The two immediately resumed exchanging blows at terrifying speed. Burge recognized her instantly. She was the second daughter of Princess Ver, not officially a hero, but her strength was monstrous. Even before regression, Louise had been one of the strongest individuals Burge had ever known, far stronger than she currently was. His thoughts raced. If she was allowed to grow any further, she would become a serious threat. Killing her now would be the logical choice, but doing so meant unleashing his full demonic power. In his current weakened state, that was dangerous. Worse, if her soldiers witnessed his true strength, his identity as the Demon King would be exposed. Golden and violet energy continued to collide in blinding flashes. In the background, Loger worked frantically, dismantling a massive structure piece by piece. During a brief opening, Burge shouted toward him, demanding to know if everything was ready. Loger panicked, yelling back that he was still dismantling the device. It was a massive mana phantom machine, designed to erase and conceal mana traces far larger than he'd anticipated. Burge snarled. If Loger valued his life, he had 1 minute. Loger swore desperately that he was moving as fast as he could. From the opposite side, Louise's aura erupted violently. 12 blazing streams of golden power burst from her body as she demanded to know who had given them permission to act. Burge glanced toward Loger and stated flatly that if the situation worsened, he wouldn't hesitate to abandon him. Pale with terror, Loger promised he was almost finished. Burge clenched his jaw. He had no idea how much longer he could continue fighting without tapping into his full demonic reserves. Every second pushed him closer to exposure as both of their mana outputs spiraled at terrifying levels. Louise shouted that she didn't care where Burge had come from. He wasn't leaving this place alive. She then turned her fury on Loger, declaring that she would break his legs so he could never escape again. Burge laughed darkly and told her she sounded more like a demon king than he did. He said she should give up. He was taking her, the blacksmith, and all the equipment with him. That was when Loger screamed that it was done. The instant the machine was fully dismantled, the flow of mana throughout the chamber shifted violently. Louise snarled that she would no longer hold back if Loger thought he could simply return and steal what belonged to her. Burge didn't hesitate. He drove his foot straight into Louise's chest. The blow sent her crashing downward, smashing into the ground as a violent explosion ripped through the chamber. Without wasting a second, Burge opened his subspace pocket and ordered Loger to move. Louise rose from the dust, declaring that such attacks meant nothing to her. Then she froze. Burge, Loger, and the machine were all gone. Moments later, her soldiers arrived, asking what had happened. Louise scoffed at them, calling them slow and asking if they planned to arrive only after she was dead. She ordered them to pursue Loger through the tunnels immediately. Then she stopped. Grinding her teeth, she realized the tunnels had been collapsed. Finally, the truth sank in. Loger had never intended to return and forge her weapon. A cold smile spread across Louise's face as wind swept through the ruined chamber. With burning eyes and a twisted grin, she declared that this was far more interesting than she'd expected. She swore she would hunt him down personally, even if she had to scour the entire continent. And when she found him, she would make him regret everything. The scene shifted again. Inside the first floor of Burge Deaz's tower, the Demon King stood before a massive magical apparatus. His posture was calm, his gaze unwavering as he examined the towering structure before him. "This is the magic we need to stop the heroes," he stated firmly. "No matter the cost, I want this device." Behind him, Princess Ernan stared in disbelief at its sheer size. She murmured that it was enormous. Nearby, Gordon tilted his head in confusion and asked what it was supposed to do. He mentioned that he'd been in the middle of cleaning when all of this suddenly started. Straightening, Loger reported that the Mana Phantom was complete and installation had finished successfully. Burge nodded once. "Activated immediately." "Yes, my lord," Loger replied without hesitation. Moments later, Burge released his dark energy. After everything it took to bring this here, it had better be worth it. Loger visibly trembled but forced himself to answer that activation was already in progress. As the enchantment completed, the magical tool roared to life. Mana surged violently, blue lightning wrapping around the tower and illuminating everything. Ernan raised an arm to shield her eyes, muttering that the light was blinding. A translucent system screen appeared before Burge. System notification. The tower has recognized the Mana Phantom. Synchronization requires 10,000 points. Proceed. Burge looked at the screen, so the tower had this function. He decided to confirm it himself. Another display appeared showing his available resources. Available points, 11,182. Without hesitation, he selected synchronization. Synchronization complete. Remaining points, 1,182. A final notification followed. System update. The Mana Phantom has recognized the Demon King as its master. Processing complete. The Mana Phantom's power source has been fully converted from mana to demonic energy. Burge lifted his head and called out to Loger. Loger immediately shook his head, insisting he hadn't interfered at all. Barely containing his excitement, he admitted he never imagined it would be possible to merge the Mana Phantom with the tower, let alone convert its power source entirely. Ernan stepped forward, her eyes sparkling as she gazed at the awakened structure. Burge Diaz turned toward her and casually suggested that she try using a spell. Ernan immediately brightened, clearly excited by the chance to test something new. She smiled and said she would use whichever spell she wanted. As she began chanting, glowing magical symbols formed in the air, and a massive sphere of colorful energy started taking shape in front of her. Gordon's face drained of color the moment he saw it. He shouted in panic, begging her to stop, yelling that he had just finished cleaning the tower. Burge, however, paid no attention to the chaos behind him. His focus was entirely on the phenomenon unfolding before his eyes. A spell of that magnitude should have been detectable far beyond the tower's walls. Curious, he moved closer to the entrance and looked outside only to frown slightly. There was nothing, no trace of magical disturbance at all. So that's how it works, he muttered under his breath. A tower synchronized with the Mana Phantom. Interest flickered in his eyes. He extended his demonic energy outward, testing how the structure responded in its current state. His hand shimmered faintly, and his expression shifted in surprise as the entire tower vanished from existence. A moment later, he spread his arm again, and the tower reappeared exactly as it had been before. Realization struck him instantly. "So I can hide the tower whenever I want," he murmured, "and summon it back just as easily." The implications were enormous. A faint glow of demonic energy flickered in his eyes as a restrained smile tugged at his lips. Using this ability freely would still be difficult for now, but its potential was undeniable. In the future, it would become indispensable. Meanwhile, outside the inner chamber, Loger had completely lost his composure. His excitement spiraled out of control as he blurted out that he wanted to dismantle both the tool and the tower, before hurriedly correcting himself, claiming it was purely for research purposes. He swore he had never seen anything like this in all recorded history, past or present. Practically vibrating with excitement, he begged to study what he called a historic discovery. After a brief moment of thought, Burge gave his answer. "Fine, if you completely wipe out the heroes trapped on the first floor, you can do whatever you want afterward." Loger's eyes lit up instantly as crimson energy surged around his body. He swore he would crush those cunning heroes without mercy. Without another word, he began chanting, fully absorbed in what he now considered his grand experiment. Leaving him behind, Burge turned toward Ernan. In a calm voice, he told her that she would confront the heroes who had already reached the fourth floor. Her eyes widened. "Me?" she asked, clearly startled. "But I'm a princess." There was a hint of protest in her tone, though it sounded more playful than offended. "You're also a gifted spirit," Burge replied evenly, "and you have no intention of returning to the royal palace." Even as he spoke, he understood the weight of his decision. Sending her into battle was no small thing. She was still innocent, untouched by the cruelty of the world, and asking her to stand against her own kind carried a heavy burden. Ernan fell silent, unsure of what she could even fight with. Fire, water, possibilities flickered through her thoughts. Burge stopped her before they could settle. That wouldn't be necessary. All she needed to do was disrupt the heroes and openly reveal herself as their enemy. If she succeeded, he would grant her another wish. She met his gaze, her expression turning serious. Slowly, she nodded. She said she would do it, but only on one condition. She wanted to be introduced as his subordinate, not as a princess. Burge blinked, surprised, but accepted immediately. "Very well." Her face lit up instantly, joy sparkling in her eyes like an excited kitten. She thanked him brightly and promised to do her best. With a playful blink, she added that maybe she could charm the heroes with her looks. "No," Burge interrupted flatly. "Do exactly as instructed." She nodded obediently. "Understood." Sometime later, Burge sat alone in silence, his gaze fixed on the system screen floating before him. He reviewed the preparations already set in motion. The first floor would thin the heroes using overwhelming mass mana cannon fire. On the fourth floor, Ernan would act as bait, drawing in the survivors so they could be finished off. Even so, it wasn't enough. With more than 200 heroes advancing, this plan alone wouldn't eliminate even half of them. That left only one option: strengthening himself further. His gaze shifted to the radiant treasure resting in his hand. Dense demonic energy coiled around it as it shimmered faintly. It was an icy water elemental spirit blossom, perfectly formed. In his eyes, it was flawless. Spirit blossoms corrupted by demonic energy were especially potent, effective even against demons themselves. He resolved to acquire more of them. Elsewhere, Ernan stood within a land of endless snow and biting cold. She scanned the frozen landscape and sighed softly. "There's nothing here either," she said. "What should we do next?" Burge replied. "This is already our third attempt." Ernan nodded faintly. Something about it felt strange. Suddenly, a towering figure appeared before them. Burge instantly raised his arm, dark energy gathering as irritation crept into his voice. "Have you come back again?" he asked coldly. "I'm getting tired of these interruptions." The massive figure let out a deep rumble and bowed his head. "I am Criodo of the Blue Forest Tribe," he announced respectfully. "I greet the Demon King." Lowering himself even further, he continued. They had come seeking protection. Burge regarded him with an icy stare. Was he asking to be taken in as kin? At once, the gathered tribe fell to their knees. Their leader spoke on their behalf, explaining that their ancestors had once been demons who betrayed the demon realm. Because of that original sin, they now wished to serve him. Burge looked down at them coldly. "Enough with the flattery," he said. "You want strength, you want to grow by becoming kin to the Demon King." His eyes narrowed slightly. They were better suited to demonic energy than relying on spirit blossoms. An orc elder nodded slowly and admitted there was no point in hiding their intentions. He ordered something to be brought forth. A box was opened, revealing a grim lotus sealed in icy frost. Burge's eyes sharpened instantly. So that was why it had eluded him. "You prepared this in advance," he said. "You even know how to negotiate." A faint trace of amusement slipped into his voice, unusual for a tribe known more for brute force than intellect. The orcs bowed deeply. Survival demanded wisdom above all else. Burge handed the box to Ernan before turning back to the tribe. "You came to me because you lack strength," he said calmly. "You seek power." The orc leader listened without interrupting. "Wisdom over strength," Burge repeated. "I like that mindset." Raising his hand, he began to chant. "I will accept only one," he declared. "Criodo?" A demonic sigil formed instantly, embedding itself into Criodo's body. Dark power flooded the snowy land as Burge spoke again. "Roam the land, expand your tribe under my authority, await my orders. I will grant you a reward greater than mere strength." His gaze hardened. "Your tribe will gain permanence under my rule." Demonic energy engulfed Criodo completely. His body twisted and reshaped as he transcended, becoming a true demon. He dropped to one knee and bowed deeply. "I offer my life and loyalty to you, Demon King." Behind him, the rest of the tribe followed, kneeling as one. The scene shifted. At Algest Mountain Tower, power surged violently through the entire structure. Outside, an orc legion stood in disciplined formation, their presence heavy and oppressive. On the first floor, Lodger stood ready beside 60 monocannons, his expression sharp and focused. Ernan waited on the fourth floor, ready to act. Still, unease lingered. He went over the plan again, carefully confirming each stage. Only when everything aligned did he finally nod to himself. Everything was in place. Raising his gaze, Burge's dark eyes hardened. "I will repay the humiliation of my previous life," he muttered silently as the approaching enemy drew closer. Elsewhere, the hero stared up at the towering mountain and spoke quietly to Granada. "We finally arrived." Algest Mountain loomed before them, vast and unforgiving. The heroes advanced, stepping onto the battlefield with a single purpose: to slay the Demon King. At the preparation base, a magnificent city stood as the starting point of countless legends. Inside its grand central hall, a lavish banquet was underway, celebrating the heroes before their departure. Laughter filled the air. Among them stood a young hero clad in polished armor, speaking with the elderly Lord Castellan. The hero thanked him politely for hosting such a grand banquet. Lord Castellan replied that it was an honor to witness such a historic moment. After a brief pause, the Lord suggested that the hero, Lord Hillen, should address the crowd. Hillen hesitated, clearly uncomfortable. But the Lord insisted, saying everyone was waiting and that it would lift morale. Seeing no way out, Hillen reluctantly agreed. Without delay, Lord Castellan announced to the hall that Lord Hillen wished to speak. All eyes turned toward him. Hillen stepped forward, clearing his throat as he faced the crowd. His expression steadied as he addressed the gathered heroes, nobles, knights, mages, mercenaries, and merchants. He spoke of their long journey, now nearing its climax. With confidence, he declared that their march for justice had terrified the Demon King so much that not a single monster had dared block their path. Laughter rippled through the hall. Confidence surged. Hillen quickly warned them not to lower their guard, assuring them that every possible preparation had already been made. His voice rose with conviction as he declared that tomorrow would be the day they took the head of the foolish Demon King. Raising his glass high, his words burned with righteous fury as he demanded to know who would dare kidnap the crown princess of Hildren, Princess Ern. He roared that it was time to remind the world who they truly were. The hall exploded with cheers. Shouts of justice echoed from every corner as the crowd lifted their glasses, shouting for everyone to eat, drink, and celebrate. From a distance, Granada observed everything calmly. Just as the Demon King had predicted, the size of the expedition had not increased, but it hadn't decreased either. Reflecting on Hillen's speech, Granada acknowledged that his charisma was the reason the expedition had come this far. Hillen had secured funding from the guilds and kept even the mercenaries loyal. Still, unease stirred within him. The last tower he had investigated had been completely empty. Something about that memory unsettled him. A dark thought crept into his mind. Should he betray the heroes now? He froze at the thought and immediately scolded himself. If the Demon King was defeated, his curse would finally be lifted. That future was worth everything. Shaking his head, Granada stepped outside for fresh air, needing to clear his thoughts. Later that night, beneath the full moon, he stood alone on a high balcony, holding a faintly glowing device. A calm voice spoke through it. "We have arrived at Horton Walk. We will rest briefly and begin climbing the mountain tomorrow." The reply came swiftly. "I see." Then the tone changed. "Once you leave Horton Walk, do not contact me again. Beware of the snow, remain vigilant at night." Then came the final warning. "When the tower door opens, never be near it." The connection ended abruptly. Granada stood frozen, confused by the warning. He muttered under his breath, unable to grasp its meaning. Suddenly, a voice spoke behind him. "What are you doing out here alone?" Startled, Granada turned sharply. Hillen stood behind him, trying to steady his breathing. Granada explained that he had only come out for some air. Nervously, he asked if something was wrong. Hillen studied him for a moment before smiling lightly. He offered Granada a drink, fruit wine favored by elves. Gratefully, Granada accepted. The warmth eased his nerves. Hillen remarked casually that Granada seemed troubled and asked if he truly believed they could subjugate the Demon King. He followed with a light laugh, teasing him for being nervous. "Yes," Granada admitted quietly. "Well," Hillen replied softly. As Granada spoke, Hillen stared into his wine. His reflection wavered as his cheerful expression slowly faded. In a low voice, he admitted that he didn't know either. Granada was taken aback by the honesty. Hillen continued, saying that although people trusted him, storming a Demon King's tower was always hell. It had never been easy, not even once. Trying to reassure him, Granada mentioned that Hillen had already defeated the Demon King of Lust. Surely a newly emerged Demon King wouldn't be as dangerous. But as he said it, doubt crept in. No one truly knew how Hillen had killed the Demon King of Lust. Curious, Granada asked him to tell the story. Hillen paused, then his expression shifted back into its familiar, confident mask. He claimed that victory had only been possible because of his brave comrades, those who stood on the front lines. He turned to Granada and placed a firm hand on his shoulder. "Comrades like you?" With renewed confidence, Hillen declared that he would take the lead in the coming battle and asked Granada to guard his flank. He ended with a confident smile, saying that if they fought together, victory was assured. Granada nodded. "I will." Satisfied, Hillen wrapped an arm around him and led him back toward the banquet hall. His expression was calm, unreadable, concealing something far darker beneath. Later, alone with his thoughts, Hillen reflected on the conversation. A cynical smirk crossed his face. "Of course," he murmured. His gaze fell upon a ring set with a red gem. "I'm counting on you this time too, Elf Granada." The next morning, the preparation base was already alive with movement. Granada marched forward with a calm, composed expression, his gaze fixed ahead. Beside him, Hillen walked proudly, soaking in the admiration of the crowd, a confident smirk resting on his face. The cheers faded into silence as the expedition entered the harsh terrain of the Urust mountain range. Snow-covered cliffs stretched endlessly around them, and a freezing wind cut through the air. The massive group advanced through the desolate land, the cold biting at their bodies with every step. As they traveled deeper, some of the warriors began chatting casually. The tension from earlier slowly eased. As the man continued boasting, something fell into his head. When he pulled his hand back, it was covered in a strange, sticky purple slime. Confused, he slowly looked up. Towering over them stood many ghouls. Panic erupted instantly. Someone screamed in terror, shouting that a ghouls had appeared. Before chaos could fully consume them, Hillen's voice rang out, sharp and commanding. His eyes burned with determination as he drew his sword. They finally showed up. Ghouls poured into the canyon from every direction. Standing firm amid the chaos, Hillen shouted for everyone to stay calm and protect their comrades. "Lord Hillen, a frost giant has appeared at the front." Hillen froze as a colossal skeletal figure made entirely of ice emerged from the canyon wall. Its sheer size stole the breath from everyone present. Without hesitation, Hillen ordered a retreat. Turning toward Lord Wharton, he spoke firmly. "I'll handle it alone." Wharton stared at him in shock, questioning whether he truly intended to face such a monster by himself. Hillen answered calmly, "No problem." Without waiting another second, he leapt forward. The frost giant's crimson eyes glowed as it loomed over him. A confident grin spread across Hillen's face. In his mind, he scoffed. A frost giant was nothing compared to the demon king of lust. With a thunderous roar, the giant swung its massive arm downward. Hillen jumped on the giant arm, who tried to kill him, throwing his own arm against the wall. Hillen dodged and continued to climb the giant's arm, finding an opening in a single, overwhelming motion. His sword, crackling with blue energy, cleaved through the massive body. As the frost giant reeled, Hillen glanced toward the rear. He saw the opening, then he shouted at the top of his lungs. "Now, everyone run!" The expedition didn't hesitate. Warriors, mages, and mercenaries surged past the collapsing battlefield, fleeing the canyon. Behind them, Wharton shouted for everyone to keep moving, yelling that Hillen was holding the line. A massive explosion tore through the canyon. Left behind, the frost giant started to fall. Then its body collapsed inward, detonating in a catastrophic explosion that shook the entire canyon. The survivors stumbled into a nearby forest, collapsing onto the snow-covered ground, gasping for breath. Their bodies trembled from exhaustion and shock. One warrior muttered in disbelief that there had been dozens of ghouls and a frost giant taller than a cliff. Another nodded grimly, adding that even the Demon King's tower hadn't been this brutal. Someone else pointed out that despite everything, their losses were surprisingly small, crediting their survival entirely to Lord Hillen's strength. One soldier whispered that Hillen had absorbed the power of the Demon King of lust after killing him. The idea spread rapidly. Soon, many believed that Hillen was already equal to a demon king. That thought reignited their confidence. Smiles returned as they convinced themselves that as long as Lord Hillen stood with them, nothing could stop them. Granada listened quietly. If it's Lord Hillen, maybe he really can defeat the demon king, he thought. Suddenly, the ground trembled again. Ahead of them stood another obstacle. A group of massive blue-skinned orcs blocked their path. Their leader stood tall among them, his curved horns gleaming. Lord Wharton spoke grimly. "There's no time to rest." Granada narrowed his eyes, recognizing them instantly. "These are Frus." Hillen's expression hardened. He could feel it too. "They're filled with demonic energy," he said coldly. "Servants of the Demon King." The orc chieftain stepped forward. His massive body radiated pressure as he grinned cruelly. "Foolish heroes," he growled. "Welcome to Ursist." Lord Wharton tightened his grip on his weapon. "I'll deal with trash like you right now." He was about to charge when Granada suddenly raised his hand. "Wait, Lord Hillen." His sharp ears picked up something unnatural, a deep, distant rumble. The sound echoed in his mind. The Demon King's warning resurfaced. "Beware of the snow." Granada's face went pale. No, realization hit him like a blade. This is what he meant. The orc chieftain stared down at them with cold certainty. None of you, he declared, will reach the tower. The ground trembled violently. Cracks split open across the snow-covered mountain. Ice groaned and shifted under its own weight. The sound of an avalanche filled the air. Granada screamed in panic and fury. How the hell were we supposed to know? Rage boiled over inside him as he cursed the one who had orchestrated this disaster. You crazy demon king bastard! The mountain collapsed. A massive avalanche thundered downward, swallowing the entire expedition. Snow and ice engulfed warriors, mages, and heroes alike, dragging them into frozen chaos. As he was pulled under, Granada screamed with the last of his strength. Everyone run! His voice was swallowed by the roaring avalanche. Far away, within his towering fortress, Demon King Burge sat calmly upon his throne. Before him, holographic screens displayed the unfolding catastrophe. One by one, the images of the heroes flickered and vanished. A slow, cruel smile spread across his face. Heroes, welcome once again, he murmured mockingly. As their screams faded, his grin widened. This time, he whispered softly, I will hunt you all down. And that is where we leave off for today. If you want to know what happens next, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next part.